The heiress who ran away to wash dishes in her own hotel, or should I say, the story of a runaway heiress who ended up marrying her own dishwasher. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. Rain poured over the glass roof of the city, the drops running down like tiny rivers of silver. Inside the grand ballroom of the Hathaway Hotel, laughter and champagne clinks mixed with the sound of a string quartet. But in the middle of the celebration, one woman could not breathe. Lena Hathaway, dressed in a silk gown worth more than most people's yearly salary, stood frozen beside a man she was supposed to marry, a merger in a tuxedo, not a fiancé. Cameras flashed. A toast was raised. And then, without warning, she turned, lifted the hem of her gown, and ran. The gasps followed her through the marble hallway. She did not care. The cold night air hit her face as she pushed through the service exit, barefoot, her heels abandoned behind her like broken promises. By the time she reached the alley, her mascara had melted with the rain. She pressed her back against the brick wall, heart racing. "No one ever loved me for me," she whispered, her voice trembling. One black sedan slowed down at the corner. It was her father's security team. She ducked behind trash bins, grabbed a cleaner's coat hanging from the door, and disappeared into the darkness. Hours later, a bus screeched to a stop at a small coastal town 200 miles away. Lena stepped off, carrying nothing but a duffel bag and a determination she had never felt before. In her pocket, she had a handful of crumpled bills. The bus left her by a street where the only light came from an old diner sign that buzzed weakly in the rain. She looked up and saw the name on the building across the street, Hathaway Inn. Her own hotel chain. Irony twisted her stomach. Maybe fate was laughing at her. Maybe this was her punishment. Either way, she pushed through the back door and found the staff locker room. A young manager looked up, startled. "We are not hiring right now," he said quickly. She swallowed, forcing a smile. "I can wash dishes. Please. I just need work." He frowned at her soaked hair, her trembling hands. "Have you ever worked in a kitchen before?" "No," she admitted. "But I learn fast." He sighed, then tossed her an apron. "Fine. Name?" She hesitated for a moment. Then, quietly, Lena Hall. That night, she stood before a mountain of dirty plates, the steam fogging her face, the smell of detergent filling her nose. Her fingers turned red from the hot water, but for the first time in years, she felt strangely free. When the clock hit midnight, the last tray came through the door, carried by a man in a worn gray uniform. "You are still here?" he asked. His voice was warm, rough around the edges. "First day," she said, smiling faintly. "I guess I am slower than I thought." He grinned. "You will get there. Just do not let the steam burn you. These machines are older than they look." She looked up, catching the kindness in his eyes. "Thank you." "Evan," he said, offering his hand. "Night manager, part-time repairman, full-time dishwasher therapist." She laughed softly. "Lena," she replied, shaking his hand. "New recruit." He nodded toward the sink. "Welcome to the real world, Lena." She turned back to the dishes, but her chest felt lighter. She did not know that the man beside her would soon become the person who changed everything, the one she would one day ask, under a flickering streetlight, to marry her for real. The next morning, the rain had cleared, but the air still smelled of soap and steel in the back kitchen of the Hathaway Inn. Lena stood at the sink, her arms sore, her fingers covered in tiny cuts from scrubbing pans all night. She had never worked a shift so long in her life. The clatter of plates and the hiss of the dishwasher filled the air. Every few minutes, Evan would walk by with a clipboard, checking the equipment, his sleeves rolled up, the muscles in his forearms tense from lifting crates. He moved with the ease of someone who belonged here. She watched him for a moment before looking away, embarrassed by her curiosity. "You survived your first night," he said, stopping beside her. "Barely," she admitted, brushing a wet strand of hair from her face. "I did not know washing dishes was a full-contact sport." He laughed softly. "Welcome to the kitchen. No one ever does until they try it." For a moment, Lena smiled. It felt strange, almost foreign, to smile without posing for a camera. Around noon, the manager called her into the office. "Lena Hall," he read from a note. "No address, no references. You are lucky Evan vouched for you. Do not make him regret it." She nodded quickly. "I will not. I promise." When she returned to the sink, Evan was fixing a leaky pipe under the counter. "You did not tell me you vouched for me," she said. He looked up, wiping grease from his hands. "You looked like you needed a break. Everyone deserves one." The words hit her harder than she expected. No one had ever said something like that to her without wanting something in return. That night, she stayed late again. After the last plate was stacked, she sat on the back steps with Evan, sharing leftover bread rolls from the buffet. The night air was cool, the stars faint above the coastal town. "So, Lena Hall," he said teasingly. "Where are you from? You talk like someone who has seen more than dish soap and broken plates." She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I was in hospitality before. But not like this." "Hotel work?" he asked. "Sort of," she said, looking down. "I just needed a change." Evan leaned back, stretching his arms. "Fair enough. Sometimes change is the only way to breathe again." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the waves crash faintly in the distance. Lena's mind drifted back to the city she left behind the ballroom, the father who only saw her as an asset, the fiancé who saw her as a business deal. For the first time, she wondered if disappearing had been the bravest thing she had ever done. A week passed. Lena learned how to balance trays, scrub ovens, and smile through exhaustion. The others in the kitchen started to like her, especially when she stayed after hours to help them finish their prep work. She began sketching small ideas on napkins, ways to rearrange the kitchen for better efficiency, little touches to make the staff room feel less like a storage closet. Evan found one of her sketches one morning. "You drew this?" he asked, holding it up. "Yeah," she said quickly. "Just something I used to do for fun." He studied it for a moment, impressed. "You have an eye for design. Maybe you should tell the corporate office about it." She laughed quietly. "I doubt they would listen." "Then maybe they should," he said, placing the sketch back on the counter. Later that evening, Lena walked home along the narrow street behind the inn. Her shoes were soaked again, but her heart felt lighter. For the first time in years, she felt useful not because of her name, but because of her work. She passed by the lobby window and paused. Through the glass, she saw the framed photo of the hotel founder, her grandfather smiling proudly. She touched the glass, whispering, "I am not running, Grandpa. I am learning." What she did not see was the black SUV parked across the street, engine idling, with a man inside holding a tablet showing her face on the news. "Target located," he said quietly into his earpiece. Lena had no idea that the life she had built in hiding was about to collide with the world she left behind. 2 weeks later, Lena had almost blended into the rhythm of the kitchen. She woke before dawn, tied her hair back, and walked the 2 blocks from her rented room to the back entrance of the Hathaway Inn. The clatter of pots, the hiss of the dishwasher, and the smell of coffee had become her new soundtrack. For the first time, her world was small, but it felt honest. Evan was the first person she saw every morning. He was always there before everyone else, checking the lights, making sure the walk-in freezer was working, leaving coffee on the counter for whoever came in next. He never said it was for her, but somehow it was always the way she liked it: with sugars, no cream. One morning, while restocking the supply shelf, Lena accidentally knocked over a box of glassware. The crash echoed through the kitchen. Everyone froze. "I am sorry," she blurted out, kneeling to pick up the shards. The head cook, an older man named Marco, grumbled, "That is coming out of your pay, new girl." Before Lena could respond, Evan stepped in. "It was an accident." "I will cover it," he said firmly. Marco opened his mouth to argue but stopped when he saw the look in Evan's eyes. Later that day, Lena found him fixing a shelf in the storage room. "You did not have to do that," she said softly. He looked up, the light catching the edge of his jaw. "I know. But I wanted to." The air between them felt charged, unfamiliar. "You are not like anyone else here," he added after a moment. "You work like someone trying to prove something." She swallowed hard, unsure what to say. "Maybe I am." That night, as she walked home, the rain began again, steady and cold. The sound reminded her of the night she ran away. She pulled her coat tighter and kept walking. Across the street, the same black SUV followed her slowly before turning off. Inside, the man on the phone said, "She is still here, sir. Working under a false name." Back at the Hathaway headquarters, Lena's father, Richard Hathaway, stared at the report on his desk. His jaw tightened. "Find her quietly," he ordered. "Before the press does." The next morning, Lena arrived to find Evan waiting outside the kitchen door with 2 coffees. "You look tired," he said, handing her one. "Late night sketching again?" She laughed softly. "Maybe. I was thinking about ways to make the lobby more inviting." "You should show me sometime," he said. "Maybe I can help." His voice was calm, but there was warmth there that unsettled her. She nodded, smiling nervously. Later that afternoon, the regional director from the corporate office made a surprise visit. Everyone straightened up when she walked in wearing a tailored suit and cold expression. "We are conducting a staff audit," the director announced. "I will need to see everyone's files." Lena froze. Her fake ID would not survive any scrutiny. Evan noticed her pale face. "Are you all right?" he whispered. "Just tired," she said quickly, forcing a smile. The audit ended without her being questioned, but the tension lingered. After work, Evan found her sitting alone in the back alley, her hands trembling slightly. "You do not have to tell me what it is," he said quietly, sitting beside her. "But whatever you are running from, it cannot be worse than what you are running toward." She looked at him, her eyes glassy. "You would be surprised." Before he could respond, the power flickered inside the building. The kitchen went dark for a moment, then the generator kicked in. "Old place," Evan muttered, standing. "Come on, I will walk you home." They walked in silence through the narrow streets, their footsteps echoing against the wet pavement. When they reached her door, Lena turned to him. "Thank you. For everything." He smiled faintly. "Do not thank me yet. You still owe me a drink for all those broken glasses." She laughed, the sound light and real. "Deal." As he walked away, she leaned against the door, heart pounding. She knew she was lying to him by staying silent about who she was, but she also knew that for the first time in her life, someone liked her for herself, not her name. Inside the dark SUV parked down the street, the man with the earpiece raised his phone. "She is not alone anymore," he said into the receiver. "What do you want us to do?" A long pause, then Richard Hathaway's cold voice came through the line. "Bring her home." The next few days passed quietly, but a strange tension filled the air around the Hathaway Inn. Lena could feel it in the way the manager whispered on phone calls, in the unfamiliar faces that began showing up in the lobby. Something was coming. She just did not know what. One evening, as the last guests left the dining hall, Evan found her wiping down the counter, lost in thought. "You look like someone waiting for bad news," he said, handing her a towel. She forced a small smile. Maybe I am. Then let me distract you, he said lightly. I have something to show you. He led her to the empty ballroom, where the lights were dimmed except for a soft glow over the center table. There, on a linen cloth, sat a simple dinner set up, 2 plates, a candle between them, and a handwritten sign that read, Staff Appreciation Night. She stared at it, laughing despite herself. Evan, what is this? You have been working yourself to the bone, he said. You deserve one meal where someone serves you. She sat down slowly. This is ridiculous, she murmured, smiling. Exactly, he said. That is the point. The meal was simple leftover pasta from the kitchen and a bottle of cheap red wine, but it tasted like luxury. For a moment, she forgot who she was supposed to be. They talked about childhood, about what they would do if money did not matter. Evan said he wanted to open a community hotel someday, a place that hired people who had been overlooked. Lena's heart twisted. That had been her dream once, before everything became about power and control. You could do it, she said softly. You already lead like someone who owns a place. He laughed. Maybe. But the world does not hand out miracles. She looked at him, her voice almost a whisper. Sometimes it does, it just does not tell you when. The next morning, her world cracked open. A convoy of black cars pulled up outside the inn. Security men in suits walked in, flashing badges. The staff froze. Evan stepped in front of Lena instinctively. What is going on? He demanded. One of the men spoke calmly. We are here on behalf of Mr. Richard Hathaway. We have reason to believe a missing person is on this property. Lena's heart stopped. She tried to back away, but the man's gaze locked onto her. Miss Hathaway, he said firmly. Your father wants you home. The entire kitchen went silent. Evan turned slowly, disbelief spreading across his face. Miss Hathaway? She swallowed hard, eyes pleading. Evan, please, but the security team was already moving. Cameras flashed outside. Someone had tipped off the local press. Reporters shouted her name as they escorted her into the waiting car. Lena, is it true you were working here under a fake name? Are you and the manager involved? Did you steal from your own company? The noise was deafening. Evan stood frozen on the steps, watching as the woman he thought he knew disappeared behind tinted glass. That night, the news spread everywhere. Headlines read Heiress found working as dishwasher in her own hotel. On social media, people mocked her, calling it a publicity stunt. At the city penthouse, Richard Hathaway paced the marble floor while Lena sat across from him, her hair still damp from the rain. Do you have any idea what you have done? He shouted. You made this family a joke. I just wanted to be free, she said quietly. Free? He repeated, his voice rising. You are a Hathaway. Freedom is a luxury we own, not something we chase. Maybe that is the problem, she whispered. You think love, freedom, and respect are things you can buy. He turned away, his tone cold. The engagement is back on. You will apologize publicly tomorrow. She stood, shaking her head. No. I will not. You will, or I will ruin that man you were seen with. The words sliced through her like glass. Leave Evan out of this, she said, voice breaking. He has nothing to do with it. He has everything to do with it now, her father said flatly. You dragged him into our world. Later that night, she sat alone in her old bedroom, staring out at the city skyline. She could see the hotel lights glowing in the distance, and she thought of Evan, his hands, his voice, his laugh in that empty ballroom. She whispered to the window, I am sorry. She did not know that at that very moment, back at the inn, Evan was packing his things. He had been suspended pending investigation. The corporate office claimed he violated policy by harboring a missing heiress. He folded his uniform slowly, still not believing the truth. The woman he had defended, the woman he had started to care for, had been lying to him all along. Days passed in silence. The city moved on, but inside the Hathaway penthouse, Lena felt like a prisoner in her own home. The security guards watched her every step, and her father's assistant followed her everywhere. The press had turned her story into gossip fuel. Every headline twisted her intentions, painting her as a spoiled rich girl playing poor. She tried calling Evan, but his number had been disconnected. Her father had made sure of that. Every attempt to leave was blocked. "You cannot protect me forever," she told him one morning, standing in his office doorway. Richard Hathaway did not look up from his papers. "I am not protecting you, I am protecting this family's name." "And what about my heart?" she asked. He finally looked at her, his eyes hard. "Your heart is not part of this company's assets." The words broke something inside her. That night, she packed a small bag and slipped out through the service elevator. She changed into jeans and a hoodie, just like the night she had run away. She did not have a plan, only a direction. She went back to the coastal town, hoping to find Evan. The Hathaway Inn looked the same, warm lights glowing through the rain-streaked windows, but when she stepped inside, the manager's expression darkened. "Lena, you should not be here," he whispered. "Corporate shut down this branch. Evan was let go last week." "Where is he now?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I do not know. He left without saying goodbye." Lena walked out, her breath shaking. The wind off the ocean stung her face. She sat on the curb, her hair soaked, and for the first time, she cried without hiding. The sound of footsteps made her look up. A familiar voice said quietly, "You should not sit on wet pavement. It will ruin your jeans." She turned, heart stopping. Evan stood there, holding 2 cups of coffee, rain dripping from his jacket. "Evan," she breathed. "What are you doing here?" "Same thing I always do," he said, sitting beside her. "Fixing what is broken." She laughed softly through tears. "You should not even talk to me. I lied to you. I hid everything." He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Yeah, you did. But I also saw you scrub floors, work double shifts, and care about people no one else noticed. That was not fake." She stared at him, speechless. "Your father had me blacklisted from every hotel in the chain," he continued. "But I do not regret helping you. I just wish you had trusted me." "I wanted to," she said. "I was afraid that if you knew who I was, you would see someone else." "Maybe I would have," he said. "But maybe I would have liked her too." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The wind howled, waves crashing in the distance. Finally, he stood and handed her one of the coffees. "So what now, Miss Hathaway? Back to the mansion?" She shook her head slowly. "No. I came to make things right." "How?" he asked. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small folder. "By fixing the company from the inside out. I found something proof that my fiancé and one of the board members have been funneling funds through fake charities. They have been bleeding the hotels dry." Evan's eyes widened. "And your father?" "He refuses to see it. He thinks exposing it will ruin our name." "So you are going to do it yourself?" She nodded. "With your help, if you will still stand beside me." He hesitated, then smiled faintly. "I have already washed your dishes. Might as well help you clean up your family too." She laughed, relief washing over her. "Thank you." "Do not thank me yet," he said. "This will get messy." The next morning, they sat in a diner, laptops open, gathering the files Lena had copied before leaving. She explained how the foundation donations had been rerouted to private accounts, how the same signatures appeared across multiple shell companies. Evan listened, his expression serious. "If this goes public, it will destroy your fiancé," he said. "Good," she replied. He destroyed enough lives already. He looked at her, realizing that the timid dishwasher he once knew had disappeared. In her place was a woman ready to fight. When they left the diner, the storm had stopped. The first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds. Lena looked up and whispered, "Maybe this time, I am not running away. Maybe I am running toward something." Evan smiled. "Then let us run together." What neither of them knew was that back in the city, Richard Hathaway had discovered her disappearance again, and this time, he was not the only one looking for her. Lena and Evan spent the next week working in secret from a small rented office above the bakery across the street from the old inn. Every morning they spread documents across the worn wooden table, connecting lines, tracing transfers, building a map of corruption inside the Hathaway empire. Evan's practical mind balanced Lena's sharp instincts. "You realize this could bring your family's entire company down," he said one night as the clock struck midnight. "Then let it fall," she answered. "If something has to break for the truth to come out, so be it." He looked at her across the desk, the dim light catching her tired face, and for a moment he saw not an heiress or a fugitive but a woman standing on her own 2 feet. "You really are nothing like them," he said softly. She smiled faintly. "Maybe that is why I ran away." They leaned over the same page, their shoulders almost touching. The room was quiet except for the sound of rain against the window. When their eyes met, the space between them felt heavy with unspoken words. Before either of them could speak, Lena's phone buzzed. A message flashed across the screen, "Stop what you are doing. They know." Her stomach dropped. "It is from my old assistant," she whispered. "They must have traced the documents." Evan stood quickly. "We need to leave. Now." They packed up their papers and ran down the narrow stairs, stepping into the night just as 2 black sedans turned the corner. "This way," Evan said, grabbing her hand and leading her through the back alley. The rain poured harder, thunder shaking the sky. They reached the pier at the edge of town, where the fishing boats rocked in the storm. "We can lose them through the docks," he said. "Trust me." She nodded, heart pounding. Behind them, headlights sliced through the fog. They ducked behind a stack of crates, breath shallow. Lena pressed her forehead against the wood, whispering, "I did not mean for this to happen." Evan touched her shoulder. "You meant to tell the truth. Do not apologize for that." When the cars finally drove past, they slipped away into a small warehouse and stayed there until dawn. The next morning, Lena sat on an overturned crate, exhaustion settling deep in her bones. "We cannot keep running," she said quietly. "We have to expose them now, before they find us again." Evan nodded. "Then we go big. Press conference, evidence, the works." "I cannot use the family's PR team," she said. "They are compromised." He thought for a moment, then smiled. "But you can use mine." "You do not have a PR team," she said, confused. "Exactly," he replied. "Which means no one can buy them." He made a few calls to friends from his old life, people who owed him favors, reporters who still believed in truth. Within hours, they had arranged a small press meeting in a community hall near the coast. Lena stood on the makeshift stage, clutching a folder filled with proof of fraud, money laundering, and betrayal. When the cameras turned on, her voice was steady. "My name is Lena Hathaway," she began. "And I have something to confess. I ran away not because I was ashamed of my family's name, but because I was ashamed of what it had become." The reporters listened in stunned silence as she laid out the evidence piece by piece. "We were supposed to build homes, not destroy them. We were supposed to serve people, not steal from them. Today, I am not just a Hathaway. I am a person who believes that truth matters." The next day, the story exploded nationwide. Headlines read, "Heiress exposes corruption within her own empire." The fiancé and the corrupt board member were arrested within 24 hours. Evan and Lena watched the news together in the same diner where they had planned everything. She exhaled, a shaky laugh escaping her. "It is over." "Maybe for them," he said. For us, it is just beginning. She turned to him, her eyes soft. Evan, I do not know what happens next. My father will never forgive me. Then make peace with yourself first, he said gently. The rest will follow. She smiled through tears. You always know what to say. He took her hand across the table. That is because I mean it. Outside, the sun finally broke through the clouds. For the first time in years, Lena felt the warmth not of luxury, but of freedom. But deep down, she also knew that her father was not finished and the price of truth might still come due. The following days were chaos. The Hathaway name was everywhere in the news, on magazine covers, in boardrooms filled with shouting men. Lena's father had gone into seclusion, refusing to make a public statement. The empire he had built was now under government investigation. Lena and Evan stayed in the coastal town, away from cameras, trying to make sense of what would come next. One morning, as she walked along the empty beach, her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. She hesitated, then answered. Lena, came her father's voice, low and strained. We need to talk. Hours later, she met him in a quiet park overlooking the ocean. He looked older, his shoulders heavy. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, Richard Hathaway said, You have humiliated me, your mother's legacy, and this company. She met his eyes, calm but firm. I told the truth, father. If that humiliates you, then maybe we should ask why. His jaw tightened. You think you have won, do you? The world will move on, but your name will never recover. Maybe not, she said softly. But at least now it means something real. He stood, voice rising. You destroyed everything we built. No, she said, standing too. I destroyed what corrupted it. There is a difference. For a moment, he looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. You sound just like your mother, he murmured, then turned and walked away. She watched him go, her heart breaking but steady. When she returned to the inn that evening, Evan was waiting by the door. You saw him, he said. She nodded. It is over. Maybe not entirely, he replied. He handed her a letter and invitation from the new interim board, asking her to return as acting CEO to rebuild the company. She stared at it, stunned. They want me back? They need someone with integrity, he said. And that happens to be you. She sank into a chair, overwhelmed. Evan, I do not even know where to start. He smiled gently. Start the way you started here, by washing away the mess, one dish at a time. She laughed, tears forming in her eyes. You make everything sound simple. It is not simple, he said. It is just worth it. The next morning, Lena stood outside the Hathaway headquarters for the first time in months. Reporters shouted questions, but she walked past them without flinching. Evan was beside her, his quiet strength grounding her. Inside the marble lobby, she looked up at the massive portrait of her grandfather. The words engraved beneath it read, Hospitality is a promise, not a transaction. She touched the frame and whispered, I am keeping that promise. That night, as she and Evan returned to the coastal inn for one last time, they found the lights flickering softly in the kitchen. The staff had gathered, holding a small cake with candles. To our boss, Marco said with a grin. The one who finally cleaned the place up. Laughter filled the room. Lena smiled through tears, looking around at the faces that had become her family. Evan leaned close and whispered, You see? You were never running from who you were. You were just running toward who you were meant to be. She looked at him, her voice trembling. And maybe I finally found where I belong. Outside, the waves crashed gently, the night air warm and calm. For the first time, Lena Hathaway felt at peace, not as an heiress, not as a runaway, but as herself. Weeks later, the world had begun to quiet down. The Hathaway empire was slowly stabilizing under Lena's leadership. She spent her days in board meetings, rebuilding trust, and her nights traveling back to the coastal town that had changed everything. It was there, in the quiet rhythm of that simple life, that she found her balance again. One Friday evening, she arrived at the old inn after a long week of negotiations. The smell of coffee and bread greeted her, and the sound of laughter drifted from the kitchen. Evan was there, leaning against the counter, sleeves rolled up, fixing a stubborn light fixture. "You came back," he said with a smile. "Of course I did," she answered. "This place reminds me of who I am." He looked at her closely. "How is it going back there? Running the empire?" She sighed, pulling off her blazer. "Exhausting. Half the board still thinks I will fail. But every time I start doubting myself, I remember this kitchen. The noise, the steam, the people who work because they believe in something real." Evan nodded. "Then you are already winning." She smiled faintly, then noticed a small box sitting on the table. "What is this?" she asked. He hesitated, then handed it to her. Inside was a folded sheet of paper covered in pencil sketches, the same kitchen layout she had drawn months ago on napkins. "You kept these?" she asked softly. "I told you they were good," he said. "And now, with your permission, I want to use them. I am opening my own small inn outside the city. A place that hires people like us who need a second chance." Lena looked up, her eyes glistening. "Evan, that is incredible." "I could use a partner," he said lightly. "Someone who knows a thing or two about starting over." She laughed. "You do not mean that." "I do," he said, his tone turning serious. "You taught me that leadership is not about control. It is about compassion. I want to build something honest, like you did." She was quiet for a moment, then reached across the table, placing her hand over his. "You already have." The kitchen fell silent. For a heartbeat, it felt like the world had stopped. Then Evan took a deep breath. "Lena, when you first walked in here pretending to be someone else, I never imagined that one day I would be standing here, asking you this." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver ring, the same one she had left behind in the hotel locker the night she ran away. "You dropped this months ago," he said softly. "I kept it because I thought maybe, someday, you would come back to claim it. Now I am hoping you will wear it for a different reason." Her eyes filled with tears. "Evan, marry me," he said simply. "Not because of your name or mine. Not because we need to prove anything. Just because we already chose each other." She covered her mouth, overcome by emotion. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands trembling slightly. The kitchen erupted in cheers as the staff peeked through the doorway, laughing and clapping. Lena leaned in and kissed him, gentle and certain. For the first time in her life, there were no lies, no masks, no contracts, only truth. Only love. Outside, the night was quiet except for the soft sound of waves rolling against the shore, as if the world itself had finally exhaled. The wedding was small, intimate, and nothing like the extravagant ceremonies the Hathaway family was known for. It was held at the coastal inn where everything had begun. The tables were decorated with wildflowers, the lights were soft and warm, and the scent of sea salt drifted through the open windows. The kitchen staff, who had once been her co-workers, now stood as her guests. Marco was the one who walked her down the aisle, grumbling, "Do not trip, boss," before giving her away with a proud smile. Evan waited for her under an arch of driftwood and white roses. His suit was simple, his eyes shining with quiet certainty. When she reached him, he whispered, "You look like yourself." She smiled. "That is all I ever wanted." The ceremony was brief but full of heart. There were no reporters, no contracts, no business deals, just vows made between two people who had found each other in the most unexpected way. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Evan leaned in and kissed her, and the room erupted in applause. Later, as the guests danced and laughter filled the air, Lena slipped away to the terrace overlooking the ocean. The sky was streaked with orange and pink, the last light of day fading into the horizon. She felt a pair of arms wrap around her waist. "Hiding already?" Evan teased softly. Just taking a moment, she said. I still cannot believe any of this is real. It is real, he said, resting his chin on her shoulder. You earned it. She turned to face him. We earned it. He smiled, kissing her forehead. In the distance, fireworks began to bloom over the water, small, shimmering bursts that reflected off the waves. I think your father would have liked this, Evan said. He called earlier, she said quietly. He did not apologize, but he congratulated us. I think that is his way of making peace. Evan nodded. Maybe that is enough for now. She looked back at the ocean, her hand resting over his. Do you ever think about how strange it all was? How a dishwasher and an heiress ended up here? Every day, he said, laughing. But I would not change a thing. The music from inside drifted through the open door, and Lena leaned against him, her voice barely above a whisper. You know, I used to think running away was weakness. Now I know it was the first brave thing I ever did. Evan smiled. And look where it led you. She looked at him, her eyes glowing in the soft light. Home. The waves rolled gently below, carrying away the remnants of their old lives. In the lobby downstairs, a new sign had been hung above the entrance. It read, The Hearth founded by Lena and Evan Cole. A home for all. As the camera of memory panned out over the glowing windows of the inn, Lena's voice echoed softly in her mind. Sometimes, it takes losing everything to find out what truly matters. Love is not a contract or a promise written on paper. It is the quiet choice we make every day to stay, to believe, to build something real. She turned to Evan one last time, her heart full. Let us keep building. And under the golden glow of their small coastal paradise, they did together, for the rest of their days.